Okay, welcome to BugeyeBob episode 82? I think it's 82. You look bored, they said. Restore a car, they said. It'll be easy, clean fun, they said. So I bought a car to restore. They lied. Restoration is a dirty, thankless job. As the great poet Robbie Burns once said in some poem about mice, men, and women, I don't remember the whole poem, but there was a line in there about the oft-made plans of mice and men aft gang a glee, which roughly means plan what you want, somebody's liable to make it go to shit at some point. So I originally planned on installing doors so I could get the A-pillars in place and welded into place and get the gaps around the doors adjusted and all that happy horse shit. But the screws that I had to hold the doors hinges to the doors and to the inner A-pillars, those screws were mostly shit. So I had to order new screws and two types of washers that go with them. And as these things often go, instead of getting them like the next day from McMaster Car at probably half the price, I ordered them from a place that specializes in parts for these old cars. Hopefully they'll send me the ones that have the points on the ends of them and not just standard damn screws. The points are important to make it easy to align the screws into the doors, into the hinges and stuff. But anyways, those aren't going to be in for several more days. Like Friday, Saturday, I guess Saturday, Sunday. The shipment's coming via U.S. Postal Service from Virginia, so who knows, it could show up 6 weeks from now, the way the Postal Service runs sometimes. So instead, I'm going to go over a bit of a tool thing. I am switching over and looking at repairing some of the damage that's done in the right and left rear quarter panels for the U.S., wings for Great Britain. The bottom of them have some bad rust in them, and those need to have some patch panels made to fix them up. And if I buy them, they're like, I don't know, $250 a piece plus maybe $260, $70 a piece now, plus shipping and handling and all that stuff. And the pieces are about that wide by that high. And I've got lots of 18 gauge steel and lots of time. And there are other places where I'm going to need pieces made that you cannot buy. For instance, the top of the rear deck, there's some pieces that patch panels I'm going to have to make to go in there. You just can't buy those. You can buy the whole right and left wings, and those are like $1,200 a piece, I think, or something like that. So even on those, I'm going to be making patch panels to fix the damage in those areas. And an English wheel will help me get those panels done and formed better than by trying to cold draw it with hammer and anvil and things like that. All right, so that's what's coming up in this episode. Sorry that we're jumping around a little bit, but hey, shit like that happens. So let's get on and look at a couple things, and we'll see where this takes us. What do you do when you got a bunch of these little damn tiny washers that you're just trying to clean crud off of? And you start trying to hold them in your hands and you get your wire brush stuck into your fingers and it doesn't feel good. Well, if you've got one of these tools that has a magnetic base with an on-off switch on it, protect the shaft on it. Pop it into a vise. Put your little pieces of metal on there, like so. twist that lock on, and scrub away. Works beauteous. You have to be careful if you're going in this direction because sometimes they will catch and slide, but if you're going crosswise, it seems to work pretty good. Turn the switch off, flip them over. Turn the switch on and do it all over again. I'd say that works good. Shut it off and you can pull the parts right off. Beauteous. That's the end of that tip from BugeyeBob. Okay, I picked up one of these small benchtop English wheels. It says it will handle 16 gauge mild steel, aluminum, and copper. I'm sure 16 gauge aluminum and copper it'll probably do. Throat deck capacity 15 and 3/8 inch. Upper flat wheel is 5 7/8. Lower wheel diameters are 2 inches with the contours of 1/2 inch radius, 1 inch radius, 1.5 inch radius, 2.5 inch radius, 5 inch radius, 9 inch radius. Let's see if I got a piece of steel. You can see that flat panel now has an arc in it this way and an arc in it this way. Now the advantage of having the rubber on the upper wheel, the thick rubber band, is that when you run it through right now, it tends to put the curve in both directions, this way and this way. But if you have the rubber band on there, it tends to put it just in this direction. Put the arc in it just in this direction. So maybe I can get a lawnmower inner tube and cut a section out of it and use that for the upper wheel. I looked and I can't seem to find a 5 7/8 inch rubber band for this thing. It's surprising that nobody makes one. Okay, so one of the things I mentioned was these lower panels here have a lot of rust damage, and the rust is actually right along in here. But it comes down into here enough, actually it's right down in here, I can feel it. So I've got to create a panel that goes in to this area right here. What I'm doing here is a process that Ray Shaleen, I think his website is called ProShaper.com. The process that he uses creating what he calls a flexible shape pattern. So I laid down a layer of the special masking tape that he sells. It's low tack, so it peels off easy. It's not designed to be a paint masking tape. It's designed specifically for this purpose. I laid down a layer of that, laid in this blue tape so that I had an outline of where I need to form edges. So this is where I can cut this off on this upper edge of here. This is where it's going to be welded into the upper panel. I've got a lip over here that I've got to form up. I've got a lip down here that has to be formed up. And then this lip goes from being a lip to being an edge to being a lip again right around in here. So what I've done is I've laid out a grid pattern here, and vertical lines are A, B, C, D, and E, and then horizontal lines coming across are 1, 2, and 3. Now the next step I need to do is take and cut pieces of cardboard that will stand up right along in here and have drawn on them and cut out the shape of the curve right at this point, so that I have a pattern of the curve at this point, 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 a pattern of the curve at this point. Then I need to come back and make patterns for 1, 2, and 3 this way that show the curve going in this direction. And when I get that all done, what I should be able to do is form up the sheet of metal off of the car and take this pattern, and when this pattern finally fits on it perfectly, I know that I have a piece of steel that will fit in when I cut this out, and it will fit in perfectly. It took me roughly an hour to lay this out. It's probably going to take me another 15 minutes, maybe another half hour to do all of the individual gauges that go for each of these lines. This is one way of doing it. Now, a lot of the people who do this sort of work do it with a paper flat pattern. And I will get in and actually do that live next. One of the things I wanted to make note of is I started out with that light masking tape this way. Then I put a layer of reinforced tape, and it's not regular nylon reinforcement. It doesn't have as tight of a lines of nylon as regular does, and because of that, it lays down on curves much better. I put down a layer of that in this way, so first layer was this way, second layer, the first layer of the nylon tape went this way. I then wrote all of this information in here on that first layer of nylon. I then came back in and put a second layer of nylon going in this direction. Was that necessary? I don't know, but I did it anyways. Then I came back and reaffirmed my lines on everything, once again on the top layer. So this is now ready to be cut out. I've made a note that I need to add like 1.5 inches down on this edge, probably 1 inch or 1.5 inches in here and all the way across, and the same around this way to whatever my total is for my pattern, so that I have some extra material when I'm maneuvering it within the English wheel. So that's what the plan is for that. And I will now go over and show you how the other guys do it using just plain paper. So most of the other guys just use this, whatever cheap paper they have laying around. Just needs big enough to cover the spots that you're going to do, which that is. And we'll start off by taping it down in a couple of spots. I want something a little tackier to hold this down to begin with. So we'll start with that right there. Now then, that lays pretty smooth around in there. But in order to get it to go around this corner, get it to go around there. We need those pieces to come apart a little bit. So we move around to this side. We see that these have to stretch a little bit right in here, and here, and in here, and in here. Kind of like that. Okay, so the next step that they do, and this is where I run into the problem, is they take a template that shows them what the radius is of all of these curves, and they will write on here what the radius is. So let's just say that this right here has a radius of 36 inches, which might be close. And then this back here has a radius of right here it might be 4 inches, up here it might be 8 inches, so on and so forth. Well, I don't have that radius tool. What this does do for them, though, is they can then take this piece of paper and lay it out flat on their sheet metal and see how big of a piece of metal they need to actually make the piece out of. And they'll put notes on there like, they might throw a dashed line like along here to indicate that's a bend over, along here to show that that's a, I guess it comes up about in here. That's where the body line runs. This is where the bottom of the piece runs. This is, they need to add on like 1 inch flange. So on and so forth. Now, if you have that radiusing tool, yeah, that's great. If you, and then they typically put, some other things in here like, this might be a radius of, let's say, 36. Right here and here. And then back here it might be, say, 28. And then back in here it drops down to like 9. And here it's like 4, say. So there's a thing that shows them how big of a piece of metal they need to have. They'll add on a couple of inches all the way around just for handling purposes. And they can go through and bend up quite reliably because they've done this for years. But again, they have that special gauge that shows them exactly what the radius is at each of these points. And they will come back and check it against the vehicle and adjust it, check it against the vehicle and adjust it, check it against the vehicle and adjust it. The only problem that this presents is you can cut out a second piece of metal based upon your first piece of metal to do the other side with, which I'm going to have to do. But by the time you've done your first one, this thing is kind of raggedy ass, and you've got to know, when you flip it over, you've got to know what you're looking at and what you're doing, and it's kind of hard to see that sometimes. Whereas, flipping it back over to this side, I don't need to have a angle gauge to measure this radius. I don't need a radius gauge to measure the radius here because it's built into my pattern. When my pattern fits on the piece of metal I'm working on, I know that that piece of metal should be an exact replacement for what's on the car. The other thing is that piece of paper is pretty fragile. I don't know how else to put it. It's fragile. And this is not fragile. I can take this, pull it off the car. I can dust the backside of it down with talcum powder so that it doesn't want to stick at all to anything. And then I can make the piece for this side, and all I have to do is turn the pattern inside out to make the piece for the other side. And I know that they will be exactly the same. So which way is the better? I think it depends upon what tools you have to work with, your experience level, and how much time you have. The guys that use that other kind of pattern, they've been doing it for years. They make their livings doing it. They have to be fast. They've worked out a system that's fast for them. I don't have to be fast. I can be slow or half-assed. And depending upon what people say, some people say, well, this is a half-assed way to do it. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've seen the cars that Ray Chalene's built. I've seen the cars that the other guys have built, and I'm impressed with the quality of both of their work. So it's not to me that their way is wrong. It's just that in this instance, I think this way will work better for me. So this is the process that I'm going to use. And when I'm done, I'll have a pattern that I can hang up on the wall. Or if somebody calls me up someday and says, hey, can you make me one of these pieces? Because I need one within a week and it's going to take me 2 months to get one from England. I can go, sure, I can make you one. And I will have the pattern ready and waiting to do that with. So that's where I'm going to stop it for this week.
But wait! There's more!
Now then, seeing how this week is kind of dedicated towards getting into repairing body panels and things like that, let me tell you a little story. When I was 16, 17 years old, I hung around with this kid that had come, his mother had married a local farmer. She was originally from Massachusetts. And we'll call him Johnny. Some people may know who I'm referring to. If you grew up in the area that I'm from, you probably know who Johnny was. I hung around with Johnny because Johnny was literally the only guy near my age within 3 miles of where I lived. So that's why I hung around with Johnny, and Johnny was trouble. But this one particular day, we'd spent most of the morning, actually Johnny spent most of the morning working on the left front fender of his 1960 Mercury Comet, which is similar to the Mercury, or similar to the Ford Fairlane in 1960. He'd had a rusted out spot, and he got that all fiberglassed up and got it down to where he was ready to paint it. So we ran uptown, up to Jamestown, and picked up the paint and came whizzing back, and I do mean whizzing. He didn't drive less than 90 miles an hour unless there was a cop dead on his ass, and then he usually tried to drive at 130, knowing that the cop would just say to hell with it and you know, wait for the accident call. But we're coming back through this one section, and there's a stretch of woods, and then there's open fields. And right by the edge of the road, oops, sorry about that, right by the edge of the road, there's 4 deer. And they're getting set to cross the road in front of us. And I saw them and had time to say, oh shit, and looks around and he sees them. And just as he sees them, the buck, and bucks do this, folks, a buck with 3 does will push the 3 does out in front of him. Because if anything big and dangerous is coming, he's going to let them get killed before the buck gets killed. That's just the way deer are. So he pushes these 3 does, and one of them starts jumping across the street, and the next one starts jumping across. That's a road, actually. It's a country road. And Johnny, he lays on the brakes, and the second doe stops. The first doe has actually just cleared the front of the car, but we're still doing 70 miles an hour because he was doing 90 when he first saw him. And damned if that doe didn't kick with her hind feet, stick a hind foot right through where that damn patch job was done. And of course that caught her and dragged her down, and she took out the whole left side of that fucking car. So we stopped. I went down to the farmhouse. I don't remember I think the farmhouse, I think it was Thayer's was the name of the farmhouse. I don't remember exactly. But I went down to the farmhouse, no cell phones back then, and asked them to call the state police. And the guy says, oh, well, I'll come out and I'll take care of the deer for you. He says, I'll kill it. So, well, the first thing he does is he gets out a knife, a jackknife, and he starts walking up and he goes to stick the knife down and slit the doe's throat. Because this doe's, there's no repair for her. She's done for. And Johnny and I both grabbed him and yanked him away just in time to keep the doe from kicking at him with her front feet and damn near slicing his throat. Because does will do that shit too. So he gets around and gets behind her and puts the poor animal out of her misery. And then the state police show up. And the state policeman's name was Frank Enblum. And Frank Enblum was the greatest fucking state trooper you could ever meet. And I got more stories about Frank I'll tell you in the future, but just for this time, remember that Frank is state trooper. And he stops and he looks at it and he looks at the skid marks and he says what were you doing, about 90 miles an hour when you hit that doe, Johnny? And he's looking at me when he says it. And of course, I'm kind of trying to fucking hide at this point. And he goes, yeah, I thought so. He says, well, he says, you can have the doe if you want her, and you take it as the spoils of war if you want. And so Johnny, he says, oh, okay, I'll take the doe, because they ate deer meat, and Johnny had the habit of doing what they called jacklighting deer in western New York, and it was hunting deer illegally at night with a big-ass light and a shotgun. There's a story on that I might tell someday. But for the time being, we take that damn deer and get home. And Johnny, he takes it out in the corn crib that his stepdad has, hangs it up and starts gutting it out. And unfortunately, that deer had 2 does in it. And Johnny, he had a strong stomach until it came to does and fawns. He didn't have any problem killing the doe, but the fawns got to him, and he couldn't handle it anymore, and so he went out, and it was in the cold time of year, so it didn't really matter a whole lot that he left it hanging there, and I thought, well, he's just going to come out the next day and take care of it. Johnny didn't. He let that goddamn doe hang in that corn crib for 3 or 4 days until his stepdad went in for something, and his stepdad kind of went a little bit through the roof. And one of the problems was that they had a bunch of feral cats running around. The feral cats had been eaten off of the thing, so Johnny, he had to finally clean that mess up. And for 6 months later, all I heard out of his mom was, the next damn time you boys hit a deer, don't you ever bring that son of a bitch home. So that's the story of Johnny and the doe. All right. Back to this thing. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, ask questions. If you got a story similar to the one I just told, then go ahead and pass it along in the comments, folks. You know, share the comedy, share the humor a little bit. Everybody needs a little bit of humor. There's a little bit of tragedy in there. The car got wiped out. A doe and 2 fawns got killed. But you know, you look back on it, and maybe that was God's way of telling Johnny he didn't want that damn car fixed up. I don't know. So, like I said, like, share, comment, subscribe. Join up over on PayPal at $4 a month. If you feel I put out content that's worth listening to or provides some decent information. Got PayPal down below. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee or a soda pop, just pop down there and hit the PayPal link, and you can make a one-time donation or a recurring donation down there. All support is greatly appreciated. It takes a lot of effort to put these things together, and until I hit over 1,000 subscribers, YouTube doesn't pay me a damn thing, and quite honestly, there's not a lot of people that watch these sorts of videos, so I have to question whether or not there's support for making them. But the more comments I get from you folks and the more interaction you folks provide, then the more that tells me that what I'm doing is worthwhile. I think there's a lot of people that watch but just never bother commenting or even hitting the like button. Hitting the like button helps a lot with these things. So that's it for this week. Hopefully next week I will have all of the missing screws and everything that I need to start hanging doors again. In the meantime, I'll be working on this stuff and learning that English wheel and trying to make these panels that I need to make, and it'll probably take me 4 or 5 tries before I get it down right. Fortunately, I got lots of sheet metal to work with from mistakes that I've made in the past that I can use as test pieces to work on and stuff. So stay tuned, folks. It's going to be a wild and crazy ride. Thanks for watching. You folks have an absolutely fantastic and blessed life. BugeyeBob, over and out.